All right. Hi, former Ann. Nice to meet you. I'm Lana. This is my partner, Jason.
Hi, Anne.
Hi.
Thank you so much for meeting with us this morning.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Definitely. Well, I'm surprised that we haven't met before this since we've been neighbors. But as you may know, we do live in Boston, so we don't get out here as much as we would like to.
How long have you been in the Bar, Vermont area, Anne?
15 years I have been here. And my dad was here before me, but I've been doing dairy farming here for 15 years. So I like it. It's been good to me.
Oh, interesting. How many head of cattle do you have on your dairy farm?
Well, right now, what do I have? I've got 30 milking Holsteins.
Okay.
And then I have a few pigs and chickens.
And are those Holsteins milking on machine or still by hand?
I'm pretty traditional, so yeah, I'm using the hand method.
Hmm.
Do you grow any crops on your land?
No, not really. I've thought about maybe harvesting some maple syrup, but I really just kind of stick to the cattle, doing the dairy farm or the dairy cows.
Oh, good. Well, we love the country up there, and we love coming up there as often as we can during the summer and the winter. And those sugar maple trees, they sure are beauts.
Yeah, it's gorgeous up here. I love it too.
We've actually also had some success with the growing zucchini and tomatoes and the corn. Remember the corn, Jason? That was absolutely delicious.
I know we put a lot of effort into that corn. It turned out to be about a buccaneer, real Boston Buccaneers, if you know what I mean.
So I understand you guys are looking maybe to lease your land.
Yes, that's right. We were looking to lease the whole 120 acres.
Yep.
Well, I gotta say, I mean, that comes at a really good time for me because I'm looking at it and the convenience of the area. It butts up to my land, so I'm really interested in hearing what you have to offer.
That's exactly right, and that's what we were thinking as well. Well, we were thinking $50 per acre, and that comes out to about 6,000 in rent a year. And like you mentioned, we thought of you because the property is so convenient for you, and you would be able to expand your business.
Yeah, I would really love that. $600 or $6,000 is really steep for me, and so I'm going to be upfront with you that I really have to kind of stick in that area. I've got pretty tight negotiating that I'm able to do, but I'm thinking about $600. The You're going an annual lease. I'd consider potentially maybe doing. Well, the neighbor has 500 and the neighbor has how much? 100 acres, and so for a market perspective, she was asking 580, and so I'm kind of going to stick around that price point. 580, 600. I'm willing to do a little bit more because you guys are convenient, so I get that, but I've got to stick in that area a little bit. So, is there any wiggle room on your end?
Well, That's good information. Thank you, Anne, for being upfront with us about that. You know, we do definitely want to lease the land to you. You're our number one priority because we are neighbors. So we want to reiterate that we'd allow you to graze your cattle over the entire 120-acre parcel, particularly the woodlands. And we want to reiterate again that you would retain those water rights to the stream that's crossing the land during your lease agreement. So do you think you'd be able to manage, you know, $45 an acre or $5,400 a year with, you know, a monthly payment? You could break it up into monthly payments of $450 a month in that case.
Mm, I mean, I really can't, because I also have to take into account if I'm going to be able to use the fields, I need to install a fence, and that's going to be some out-of-pocket costs for me. And so you know, I'm going to be doing some tenant improvements as I see it, and I'm not going to be able to really budge too much from there, but I could, you know, we could maybe negotiate some of the fence cost, and I do appreciate, you know, what your land offers. And I sure would take care of it.
Well, definitely. And that's again to say you're our neighbor, and we definitely want to make sure that we're both satisfied and maintain our relationship. We were also thinking that perhaps we could supply seeds for gardening to plant different types of fruits and vegetables. We would be able to supply the seeds for you in exchange for a little bit of our own food. We would take some of that in order to, and we were also thinking about you would be able to sell the rest of the crops to the bed and breakfast that's down the road, and you would be able to profit off of that as well. So do you think you would maybe perhaps be able to do $40 an acre? That would be $4,800 a year.
Well, you know, I like the idea of doing the seeds and maybe incorporating that into, you know, some community food. But again, I'm pretty tight as far as the funds go. And I think just from a market perspective, it would be not a good business for me. I would end up being upside down in my investment if I were to overextend myself. You know, I'd be happy to try to harvest the garden and incorporate that, maybe split some of that profit share. But you know, another option for me is we could potentially harvest some of the maple, and then also I could rent a wood splitter. So maybe we could split. You know, we could do some sale from the wood and thin out the trees and sell the corded wood. I know in Boston, the dollar amount is $150. And then, you know, the syrup is going for a pretty decent price of $24 a gallon too. And I have a maple sugar shack that I do have the equipment for, and kind of some knowledge, and I enjoy that. So maybe we could potentially incorporate some of that into the profit share.
Wow, that sounds like something that would be really rewarding for us, because one of the principal reasons that we purchased this property about 4 years ago with all of our savings, was because we wanted to get reconnected to the land, and we obviously wanted to offset some of the costs of our own living in the city through gardening, for instance. But I really like this idea of profit splitting. Don't you, Lana?
That does sound like something interesting.
Yeah, and I mean the fact that Anne is offering the um, maple syrup harvest, and I'm not sure how many chickens and pigs you have, but perhaps maybe we could do some sort of, profit share, and if you could possibly absorb, say, $35 an acre for 120 acres, that would be about $4,200 a year, or $350 a month. And that, we could consider setting off our own food costs through a barter trade agreement for milk and pork and eggs and definitely maple syrup.
Yeah, I mean, I like where that's going. I like the figures going down, obviously, because I think that it has to be a profitable engagement for both of us. To that point, I think that maybe some of the investment in my part, and maybe looking at a longer term lease, because if I get invested and get my maple syrup shack running, and start harvesting the land for the seeds and garden and preparing in that way, I'd really like it to be a little bit more long term. And again, maybe with that vested relationship, you'd consider coming down a little bit more on the lease, because like I said, it just doesn't seem like it's really in the market. And, we've got a lot of options to work with outside of just a flat dollar amount.
Well, I think that a longer term lease is something that we could definitely do. We could even start out by doing 2-year increments if you would like. We could possibly go longer. What do you think, Jason? Do you think we could do maybe 5 years?
Well, sure. I think that we can reevaluate on a biannual basis, for instance. I definitely want to make sure that we don't carve up the 120 acre parcel into separate lease agreements. So for us, Farmer Ann, the most important thing is to make sure that the 120 acres are going to a sole tenant.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and also talking about harvesting, we could also use part of the garden as a co-op, for the spirit of community. Maybe how about $30 an acre, and that would bring it down to 3,600, and that's the intention of a longer lease.
And that's $10 a day or $300 a month. What do you think about that figure?
Well, I mean, in my eyes, it still is a little bit high. And then, in comparison with the neighbors, who are given $25 for hay fields and $1 for pasture land. I mean, I think I have to put it in the context of what the you know, what the price point is for the region. So I'm thinking, even if so I did some calculations here with my maple syrup. I was thinking if I were to tap 50 trees and get about $24, you know, based on what I could do, I would be looking at potentially $600 in profit there. And then the cordwood, if I did 10 acres, I'd be looking at about 750 profit. So I'd be at 1250. And I can't, you know, the cost, I really like, I don't know what we could do as far as, you know, the seeds, what that would bring in, you know, to get us to a closer to bridging that gap between the, you know, between our prices. But I know you guys feel the taxes, that tax increase, but you know, that's kind of what I'm waging as well, is trying to temper the cost of the tax increase too, that my land has sustained. So I'm kind of working within the confines there.
Well, definitely. Thank you for sharing those profit margins with us. That really is helpful in terms of our understanding, for our transparent relationship. And, you know, we really wanted to not drop below $25 as our final offer, or $3,000 a year, or it's essentially $250 a month. That's $8.30 a day. But you know, based on everything that you've shared with us and your passion for your stewardship on the land, I think, don't you, Lana, that we really like Farmer Ann, and we really love the fact that she's, you know, a steward for those traditional life ways. And I think that maybe we should just continue this negotiation and go a little lower than we perhaps planned. Wouldn't you agree?
I completely agree. Yeah.
So,
I ditto everything that you've just said, Jason.
I mean, with that being known, we don't want you to incur any substantial cost. And so by installing the fence, you know, we want to be available and help you maintain that fence. And that can actually help our own posterity as far as designating what we're going to be using as pasture. And if you're benefiting and using the land as a steward, it will actually help us in the long run. So we've got that $1,250 profit, and we've talked about the profit split. You know, we'd love to come up and be more present, but the thing is that we've been camping in a tent or staying at a cottage, and we're just not able to really deal with the heat and the bugs, and the cottage is just a little too expensive. I mean, what do you think, maybe $20 an acre, or how do you think we'd be able to offset those costs of travel?
Well, you know, I have a spare room because my kids have left. And so I would be willing to, you know, throw in some time both in the summer and winter, because I know winter, as far as the ski season, is pretty attractive to people. It's got a separate entrance, which is really nice.
Okay.
It's at the back of the house, and so you would have your own privacy. And let's see. Yeah, and it has its own separate entrance and staircase. And so I've been kind of kicking around the potential of doing an Airbnb or something like that, but I could certainly include that in the negotiation if it's gonna get us closer to where we need to be, because I really find that the land attractive. I like the community aspects of it and the engagement of getting to know you guys a little bit better, and building a community. So I like that attractive piece to it. I hadn't really thought too much of what the price point is for that. But I would imagine.
Well, I will say that we've been paying upwards of $55 for the cottage per night.
Oh, okay. And how many are you out there? Like a couple of, how often are you out there? Like a couple weeks at a time?
Well, it just depends on the time of the year. Because we're, working shifts in the city, we have to maintain that 9 to 5 during the week. So we just, make that trip up to Vermont usually on Friday afternoons and are heading home by Sunday afternoon. Most of the time, we do take a 2-week vacation during the summer. And that's we've been camping on our property there. But like I said, as much as we love to camp, 2 weeks of sleeping in a tent can be weird.
Yeah. So I'm thinking maybe if it were, if we were to settle like if we, gave you a cost break on that, and maybe gave you, I'm thinking 21 days just as an estimate, but we could certainly, if you wanted 2 weeks in the winter, 2 weeks in the summer, if you want to do those in a block, or you want to separate them per weekend, how you want to do that. I'm certainly open to that. Maybe if, just as a budget perspective, if we were to do it like $30 a day, we'd be looking at.
Well, if we did 21 days at 55, it's 1,155.
Mm-hmm.
But if we really wanted to maybe make it easy, I was hoping we could perhaps do, 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
And that, would more than likely not include things like holidays.
Mm-hmm.
So we wouldn't want to interfere with your, holidays.
Yeah, and I mean, you would be looking at, even if I gave it to you at a rate that was discounted so that you really get an advantage and a cost break from that $55, and I gave it to you for like $30, you'd be looking in the ballpark of about $900. And so that's almost $1,000 that could go towards, that would be in lieu of the traditional rent that I would be giving you for the land.
So we're looking at basically a profit share of $600, a $900 lodging write-off. I mean, I'm not sure. You're very convincing there, Anne. What do you think, Lana?
I think that it sounds fair, and I think that would work out for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And then I do want, I am open to the $600 profit share for the, what is it, my maple syrup and the wood. Now, just to make it clear, because I still need to have an advantage, or it needs to, be a lucrative deal for myself. My cattle any profit from that would remain the milk, because I'm coming in at $600. Like if I pay you the traditional rent of $600 and then you get kind of a $900 break and then $600 maybe profit share, you're looking at about, what does that come out with?
2,100.
Yeah.
12 plus 9.
So that's about $2,100
And that,
that you're getting. I'm getting maybe $600 in profit. But if I'm also paying $600, it's kind of a wash for me at this point.
well, I think the most important thing, you know, is I don't know how we settled on that 600. That basically is $5 per acre for 120 acres. But I mean, I'm amenable to that, and as long as you know, part of the deal for us is definitely the eggs and some pork when you slaughter, and some milk, you know, during those times whenever we do make the trip up to Vermont, that we'd be able to fill our cooler with. We love that unpasteurized dairy milk, so that's what keeps us young and beautiful. So as long as we can, you know, fill up those gallons of that unpasteurized milk and get a few dozen of those eggs, I mean, that's worth the trip in and of itself.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly would be open to that of, you know, when you're here and to make sure that you guys leave with, you know, eggs and the milk, and yeah, I would be open to that as well. And we could even, I mean, my figures were a little bit conservative. You know, we could take a look at and maybe potentially get more syrup. You know, like we said, if we did a 2-year engagement, increase those profits a little bit more in year 2 as we get a little bit more established, and then, like you said, renegotiate at year 2 and assess where we're at.
I think that's a great idea. So with that being known, let's go ahead and set those terms for a 2-year lease agreement in terms of a $600 rent. And in terms of the additional terms, as far as the profit share and the $900 lodging fee, pork, milk, and eggs, we can just sort of take those 4 or 5 pieces as they come. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think that seems, I mean, I think that would be good for me. The profit share being on the maple and the crops that I have. And then at this point, I think within that first 2 years, I really want to keep my dairy profits separate. But I, of course, would provide you with the milk and give you that, you know, give you that services of having the milk and the eggs, of course, at no cost.
Well, absolutely no. The profit share doesn't include anything in terms of the dairy operation.
Okay. Okay.
It only includes the potential timber rights, which I'm still on the fence about. And how about you, Lana? How do you feel about the timber rights in terms of making a profit?
The timber rights, I don't know, I think we're gonna have to talk about timber rights. Unless we could kind of, we could discuss exactly the amount of timber that we're willing to have, the amount of trees that we're willing to have cut down, because we really don't want to ruin the landscape by
And
having tree
my
stumps.
figure was pretty conservative, so it was if we did 10 acres.
Yeah, and we can watch the market.
Yeah.
Or we can just call the land as we need individually.
Mm-hmm. And we could do a walkthrough, you know, to make sure that we are in agreement about the area that we're addressing.
That makes me feel more comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. And I'll go ahead and based on our great conversation today, I will cover the cost of drawing up the lease. I've already talked to my local lawyer in Bar. And so we'll just go ahead and put all our names on the lease, the amount of rent that we agreed upon, $600 per year. And I'll tell you, and you can just pay us that however you want. If you just want to do that one lump sum of 600, that would be great. Otherwise, if you need to split it up, that's fine. And then the term of the lease is going to be for 2 years.
Okay. That sounds good.
Okay. Great.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
I'm looking forward to it.
And we'll be in touch.
Alrighty.
All
Bye.
right.
Talk to you later.
Bye.